Brent Amundsen. I am the Executive Director at Dell. I lead the Center of Excellence for Global Talent Acquisition. Fairly large organization, large enterprise for that matter. But hopefully we're going to share with you information that you can use regardless of your company size or what you do. Pam?
And my name is Pam Hennard, and I also work for Dell. I am a Talent Acquisition Director, and I'm responsible for, on the operational side, hiring in North America. My team probably hires about 9,600 people a year, so we know a lot about a lot of hiring. So hopefully this will help you.
Good. To start off, just want to kind of a show of hands so it helps us understand the audience a little bit. Those of you who would say you work for a large company, and I'm not going to pick a size, but if you work for a large enterprise organization, raise your hand. Great, more than I thought actually. Medium-sized organizations, it's about half the same size as that. And small companies. Wow, it's like a third, a third, and a third. So that's good. Second question is, how many here are talent acquisition or HR leaders, people managers? Okay, and how many here are individual contributors? Great, okay, we're probably 2/3 on the management side. So that helps us gear our content. It doesn't change the content, but it helps us understand what to say. So, what we're going to talk about today is how we at Dell have been successful in engaging our own team members, and I'll use that word interchangeably sometimes with employees. Our employees are called team members. How we engage them to help us in our talent acquisition efforts, and how we've been really successful in doing some really practical things. My role for the first few minutes here is to really talk about Dell at a high level, things we've done as a company, not necessarily just in talent acquisition, because that builds the construct for how we're going to build a TA into it. And then Pam's going to talk about some really practical tips and tricks and things that we've done on the ground with her team, with the teams around the globe to get it done. When we leave, I'm pretty confident that each of you will have something interesting to take home with you. It's not rocket science, it's not perfect. We're making really good progress, it's never good enough, but you'll have some good tips and tricks to take home with you. And we'll finish with Q&A because this group is usually really interactive. And so I'm happy to answer questions, challenging questions, whatever you want. We're both going to answer questions for you. So have a seat if you want, ma'am. All right, when you look at where we've come in the last 10 years, it's radically different. Now, you've heard other speakers say that, and I fully understand that. You know, we've got these new platforms that come on. We can't control who's coming. We got LinkedIn, we got Twitter, we got Facebook. Those are our big three. You got Pinterest, you've got Zing, you've got different things in different countries. We can't control them coming in, but we got to do something with them. Sometimes we'll say we'll do nothing with them, but you got to do something. You got to make a decision about them. So that's always coming on. And then when you look at it as a TA organization, you say, well, if we're going to participate in a particular platform, we're going to have to develop content. And that part right there is what is really overwhelming. Chris talked this morning, he stole some of my talking points, so I won't repeat them. But he talked this morning about what he did at PepsiCo with the coffee with people to engage them and pull them in to the process. And you've got to do stuff like that. And so that's where the people part comes in. And when you look at an organization, he said he wanted to hire 6 people. They get to hire 6 people. We're in the same boat. We don't have any single person in our organization, as large as it is, that owns employment brand. A group of us own employment brand, and we collectively try to figure out how to make it happen. We've made some really good progress. But we've had to leverage the individual person in the organization who may be in TA, not be in TA. Both are important and critical to our success. So we've got to put our arms around them and say, come with us and let that lead. Then what happens is your content is from the masses, so you're almost crowdsourcing your content, but then you can put it together in an execution plan, and that's what we've been able to do at Dell. So I'm going to talk about how we're using professional communities and social media today at Dell at a high level. So move us up out of talent acquisition for a second, and let's talk about Dell as a whole. Our goal is to lessen the distance between us and our customers. Okay? Now for TA, that's our candidates. But at a Dell level, it's to lessen the distance between us and our customers. Now, if you know the history of Dell or care anything about Dell, you know we started with an online direct sales model, directly selling to people. So it's very important we have a direct relationship with our customer, and so this philosophy feeds every do in the social media space. Our 4 major goals are to build credibility, build knowledge base for people. Second one, we do understand there's a TA component, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time on today. Third, it's our customer relationship management through the profile-based targeting. And finally, it helps Dell create business opportunities through our social channels. And we're a very active user of LinkedIn, for example, not only on the TA side, but on our sales side as well, for developing those relationships. And so that's very natural once we push people for them to make that connection. It makes sense. Okay. So what we do is we leverage our team members in this process, and we encourage them to get LinkedIn profiles if they don't have them. We push really hard to help them understand the value of doing so, what's in it for them, as well as what's in it for the company. And we really benefit from that. So one of the analytics that LinkedIn was able to share with us is that before somebody ever says yes to a career opportunity with our organization, they've checked at least 13 LinkedIn profiles. Can't see that at an individual level, but at a macro level, we know that's the average. So we know it's really important that not only do we, as TA practitioners, sell the organization well, but whether we like it or not, our team members are selling or not selling the organization as well. And a lot of that nowadays is on their LinkedIn profile. So it's really important for us to connect them to that. So how we start, again, not just TA, at Dell level, high level, we have this thing called smack. And it doesn't mean we walk someone in a room and smack them in the face and say, you need to get a profile, we need to work on this. But what it is we teach people very practically through a series of modules, there's 6 or 7 modules, on the social media and community principles that we abide by. So the very first class we ask as many employees to take as possible is our principles class. If they want, they can take a class on Twitter. If they want, they can take a class on LinkedIn. If they want, they can take a class on Facebook. And I make it sound like it's a big, laborsome class. But these are engaging webinars where there's a live person walking people through each of these platforms. Why is Dell there? What do we, why do you care? Why do we care? Why is it good for you? And how do you use it? So it's bigger than what most companies do is say, well, we have to have governance, we have to have rules, we've got to protect the brand, we've got to have people not saying bad things. All that's good and all that's true, because all that can happen. But it's bigger than that for us. It gives us a purpose as to why we're even there, gives us a platform to share on, it gives people reasons to believe in why we do what we do, it gives them the tools and the resources and a community for them to plug into. And so, people who finish all the courses are called SMAC certified, and I'll explain why that's important in just a little bit. But all of this is kind of tied together in a bow in what we call SMAC certification. And so at Dell, we encourage people to be extremely social. We have an internal, we use Salesforce.com as our internal chatter community, and so it's very natural for people once they've been around for a while to say, this is how we communicate, this is how we do this, and it works really well. Once we get somebody to the point where they say, okay, I'm SMAC certified, what we want to take advantage of as a company is people who are good at what they do, experts in their field per se, that can really help us innovate and get content out there. So here's where the content piece starts, to not be overwhelming. You get people who say, I want to put content out there, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. We don't necessarily have to tell them, you need to say this, you need to spin it this way, you need to do that, because we've already trained them on what the do's and don'ts are, what's acceptable use and what's not. And so you have to kind of let them be adults and go out there and do. And so they get to do that, and they get to do that by being what we call champions, and so they can be members of different groups. We've got people who are not in TA, that are members of recruiting, we call them clubs, which I hate, but these different groups that put out tweets and posts on different topics. It could be engineering, it could be software technology, it could be on marketplace, it could be on whatever they want to do. It's for them. So it's a great opportunity. And the other important thing about social media, really anywhere, but particularly for Dell, is transparency. So what we don't want to have is people out there saying, it's the best place to work and I'm so happy here, I mean, we want people to say that we want to be realistic, right? And so we always ask people to disclose our for Dell with a hashtag, so that somebody reading that has context to say, okay, they work for the company, so they're saying this, and so that puts context on it. So we teach people how to do that. The benefit to us overall has been really profound. And so when I was little, there was a commercial on television. It was a shampoo commercial. I don't remember if it was Jergens or Breck, but I'm going to say it's Breck. And it was this blonde girl, who loved her hair, and it was beautiful. And she would tell two friends, and they would tell two friends, and they would tell two friends, etc. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the Breck girl and the Breck guy. So I'm not sure whether they do this or something in their hair, but so that's what we're looking for, is people who just do that, and it makes it a lot easier for us to operate. Now, here's where those of you in small companies are going to go, look at what they get to do. So, what advantage we have as a large technology company and as a first mover really in the space, we have what you're looking at here is the social media command center, and literally it's a big brother thing. It's a room, you've seen it, it's a room full of monitors that is telling us all the time who's talking about us. It's really freaky. And there's actual people that are glowing green, and there's countries that are glowing red, which is telling us in general the sentiment here is positive. In general, the sentiment right now, this moment, is negative. In general, this person keeps saying really negative things. Maybe we need to reach out to them. This person's saying really positive things. Maybe we need to like their post. So all this stuff's going on this big screen. And it's really a great opportunity for us as a company, again, we haven't gone to talent acquisition yet, but to really understand our customers, good and bad. Okay, it's a great intervention tool. But 4,000 posts a day, 6 years ago, now we're at 25, 30,000 posts a day about Dell. Again, good experience, bad experience, whatever it is, it's all out there. It's public, and we're trying to listen to it. It's been so successful for us that we actually sell this as a service now for clients. And so, for example, recently we put this in the American Red Cross, and it went live not too long before Hurricane Sandy hit. So when Hurricane Sandy hit, the Red Cross Center had this big wall of this command center telling them where people were really in trouble based on their tweets, their posts, whatever they're saying. The one thing that worked in a lot of cases, not all cases, was their phones. And they could put this stuff out there. And so, highly recognized, actually Obama came and recognized Dell and the Red Cross Center for the response. But this puts us a little bit of advantage, but what we'll talk about are things that don't require this kind of science and this kind of technology. So one of the really practical things we did is a group of us were sitting around 2.5 years ago with LinkedIn, with our team. When you want to do something really fun and memorable, what do you do? And George says, go to Vegas. No, I'm kidding. So we actually went to Vegas. So we went to Vegas, however, across the street at the Mandalay Bay. Dell has a sales conference, and we pull in all our most important sales leaders, and we do training and development, teaching them about new services, personal development, all these different things. And we said, you know what? These guys need to understand the value of social media to TA. They really need to understand it bigger than that. So partnered with LinkedIn, and we did an exercise in 2011 where we brought people in a room just like this, only over at that hotel, and we had a group of people that talked to them about here's why it's important, here's how you can be involved, here's how you can develop business with LinkedIn. It was very LinkedIn focused. Here's what we can do with your profile, and let's go over here in this room and print your profile, which at the time was a fairly new thing. Now it's very common for a lot of people to use. But it was personal, and it was effective, and it got results. And I'll show you some empirical evidence that told us that it worked. So we left that event and said, okay, this worked, this did not work. We took the learnings from that and said, you know what, let's build a whole course content, maybe an hour long, where our recruiters, a large group or small group, can teach people why this is important, why it's important to have a good LinkedIn profile, why it's important to connect with professional networks, the whole shebang. So we created, this is where TA comes in, and Pam will be getting into detail of what that looks like. Then we started rolling it out in collaboration with our SMAC team, so we partnered with marketing and said, you need to help us sell this, because it's really good stuff. And so between that, we've been able to roll this up globally. It's been very effective for us. When we started this, if you look at FY12, so that's just 2 years ago, we had 38% of our people within Dell Dell without a LinkedIn profile. You may say, well, yeah, but that's how cool it was 2 years ago. Maybe true, but we've been able to impact that and get that number down to less than 11% now of all Dell team members have a LinkedIn profile. So we said, well, that's good. So we want people who are not on LinkedIn to be on LinkedIn. Now, once we get them on LinkedIn, we want them to have a good profile on LinkedIn. So let's get them involved in that class and get them in principals class so that they understand how to tweet on behalf of the company if they want, right? And how they can do Facebook posts, etc., and how it benefits them and benefits the company. And then for people who get principals, that's great. That's a good number of population. And we're at 22% of people that are there. We said, now let's get a group of that population who are passionate about what they do, who are smart about what they do, and who are interested in engaging about Dell. Let's get them through the full class, and our goal is 25%. We're about just less than 10 right now. So we made progress, and that was through the efforts of our team in TA. Again, it's not somebody's job, it's just the night job or the side job of recruiters when they sit down in an intake session with the hiring leader, or they go to a staff meeting or something and say, hey, let me tell you about why this is important. So we get them passionate about it. The results for us, I'm not going to read this, have been very, very positive. We've had very good results in a lot of our areas, not just on LinkedIn. Facebook's been we've moved the needle quite a bit, although it's not a recruiting platform for us as much as it is an engagement platform to tell our story. Our SEO work has been really, really good. And the number of new applications we get is pretty stunning. It's 60,000 applications every month. So it's not for lack of numbers that we do this. It's for lack of people who really understand what we're looking for that we do this and really engage in that. So this graph is interesting here. If you look at that first, so this goes 3 years back. The first camel hump occurred right after our Las Vegas event. Okay, so we sat down with people, and what this chart is, and for those of you up in the skyline back there, the number of new followers per month is what this is tracking. And before we really kicked this in, it was okay, but then we had this camel hump that occurred partly because we engaged a bunch of people in Las Vegas who then it multiplied itself and all the brick growth thing happened, and suddenly people are following us. And it dropped off for a little bit because we were still developing the program for the rest of the organization, and then you see the next spike start up. So it told us, not perfect data, but directionally you guys are doing a good job. So we're pretty happy with that. Second thing that we do measure with our LinkedIn team is how many people we hire who have a LinkedIn profile are we impacting before they get here with something we've done proactively on LinkedIn. It's a mouthful. And I always chastise our account team. I'd say, you have to say this really clearly what this means, okay? The people we hire who have a LinkedIn profile, did we do something with them prior to them accepting an offer, prior to them changing their employer profile to Dell that had a positive thing, whether it was an in-mail, work with us ad, another ad? And the answer is, it's made a big difference. We see these numbers here. So we just went over 50% last month. So the people we're hiring, and more people that we're hiring, in fact, the majority of people we're hiring have a LinkedIn profile. And it tells us that the work we're doing with LinkedIn is working, and it's a cumulative effect. It's not just buying stuff from LinkedIn. It's not just buying a work with us ad. It's not just buying more seats. It's about engaging other people who are connecting other people who are filling in the dots to bring them here. And so I've been preaching for years that source of hire is almost unsolvable because of the way the world works. It's not like somebody goes, I'm looking at a newspaper ad and I apply for the job. That's what we used to care about. Now I did a Google search. It took me to Indeed, which then sent me to the company website, which was interesting, but then I was like, I think I know Joe who works there, so I went into LinkedIn, and I went into Facebook to see that, and then I looked at Dell's profile on Facebook, and I looked at the company site. It's always an and so metrics are really good, and I'm crazy about metrics, that's anything that works for me, but that one is really unsolvable because of this matrix thing that happens. So you have to look at trends, you have to look at big data and kind of say, I'm okay with this, I think we're doing all right, and we need to get there. So one other data point I want to share before we bring Pam up and have her talk really practical things that we've done that you guys can take home is we used the proof points early on, so the early camel hump here, some of the early successes that we had. We were able to go to leadership because just like Chris talked about this morning, nobody's throwing money at recruiting saying, here, you guys do what you want. We always have to fight for every dollar we get. And the way we work, we get a set budget at the beginning of the year. So forget about demand going up or down, doesn't matter, here's your budget. It's a terrible way to operate, but it's the way we operate. So what we do is we set that and we say, okay, here's what we're going to spend. Well, then what happens, if we don't control it, what happens is recruiters max out, our benefit, goes down, and people go to search agencies. That's kind of the first one. They're like, I can't get my help I need. Or we have to go ask the business for funding. And so that search agent thing was a huge mystery. So I went on a tear because we did not know how much we were spending on search agencies. And then those of you in big enterprise corporations know how this works. And then you work with finance and you get these big charts of stuff that they say people are spending on recruiting, and you find things like office tables and just all kinds of stuff. So you clean all that crap up. And I was able to say, you know what? If we invest in our team, if we invest more in LinkedIn, if we invest in a few other key areas, and we get executive support behind it to say, stop the nonsense, get agency spend down, I'll commit $10 million savings on an annual basis. That was our commitment. So we went in with a commitment and said $10 million. And beautiful things happened, right? We did all the things right, and we ended up with a chart that looks like this. And I don't have real numbers on here because it's proprietary information, but this is what the agency spend chart looks like. And I promise you, if any of you want to go into your leadership with a chart like that over time, you'll be like, how much more do you need? What else can we do? Now, we're almost at the bottom here, so we can't take up much more. But we actually ended up doubling the commitment we made and doing that much savings. So, so really exciting stuff. And there's a lot of things we still don't do right, but there's a whole lot of things that we're doing right. And so Pam is one of our top TA leaders, brilliant manager, heart of gold, and I've worked with her for 8 years, and so she's going to come up here and talk about some of the things we do, the practical level you can take home, regardless of your size.
Thanks very much, Brandon. So, when I started in talent acquisition, I have to tell you the story because it was kind of funny. I started my first job in talent acquisition. I walked in the room, my office, and it had some really cool things in it. It had one of those Rolodexes that spin, remember those? It had a Thompson guide, if some of you are old enough to remember those. It had a stack of employment applications, and the thing I coveted most was the telephone. And that was recruiting back then. Oh, and I forgot the requisitions was a recipe box, and it had index cards that, aligned to requisitions. And I thought, wow, this is so great. And then the IT guy came in, 6, 7 months later, and he hauled in a computer. And I'm like, what's this thing for? I got everything I need over here. I got my Rolodex, I got my phone, I got everything. Now we're going to put in this thing called an ATS. And I remember just cringing, thinking about, oh, I got to put stuff in there to find candidates. And I hated it. And it was probably 3 or 4 months I started getting into the rooms, and I'm like, this works. And then they told me, oh, we bought a subscription to Monster. And I'm like, oh, that didn't work, right? Monster is what's Monster? People aren't going to look for a job on the internet. And what I found as I was going through that experience was that although it was change was good. And what we found at Dell for our recruiters now who have all of these input methods and tools is they felt the same way that I did when the IT guy brought in the computer, when the ATS came, when Monster came. It was very intimidating when you start thinking about social media. So we would ask the question, have you tweeted today? And we're like, oh gosh, what does that mean? I'm trying to fill jobs. And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about are some of the practical things that we did to kind of inspire our recruiting team. And one of the first things that we really had to do was start to synergize amongst ourselves. Okay, so we all had to get on the same page, and one of the first things that we did is we started looking at our career website. We said, gosh, we need to change. The career website looks kind of old. And so we enlisted help, and we started reviewing our website and made sure it had all of the plugs. We had LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. And you say, gosh, that's not a big deal. We've done that. The other thing that we did, and I thought it was really smart, is that we started talking to the recruiters about the functionality of the site. Because one of the things that we forget, the recruiter is heads down in LinkedIn and their ATS. They're not paying attention to the career website. So we did a really good job of making sure they understood how easy it was to share jobs, and so they could really inspire our leaders to do that as well. And it really worked, and it helped. We also did something that was very, again, cheap and free, which is we started looking at our email signatures. You know, and everybody has their own signature. You know, some people have their picture. Some people just have their name, no phone number. And we thought, you know, this is a really good way for us to align as an organization on an email signature. And you can see the email signature, but the interesting thing is it has all of our social media sites. And the reason we did this was because we wanted to make sure, again, that our recruiters knew, where's our Facebook page? What's our Twitter handle? Where do we go? And what this did is it helps our leaders, you know, it's kind of like free advertising to our leaders. They could see, oh, they've got a Twitter page. And even to our candidates. So as we're talking and prospecting with people, maybe they choose not to email us back, at least they have access to all of our information. And then the other thing we started to do, because, you know, social media really isn't regional, it really is a global thing. But the issue is that global doesn't always translate to regional. And I think some of you were in a couple of sessions that you heard that, right, where some Facebook may not translate in some countries. So what we did is we put together a team of people, pioneers, people that said, I love social media, and I want to do more. And in each of our regions, we have a social media expert. And what their goal was to do was to kind of get us aligned on what works in those regions. And then we would all come together, and everybody would talk about what that meant. And we tried to align on some key practices around branding, how we're going to brand sites, what we're going to publish on a regular basis around the world, regardless of the region. And everybody felt really good that we had kind of a strategy. It started as a strategy. And then we started by trying to align our recruiters on content. So those global teams that were responsible for the regions started to ask for content. So we would share, they would share jobs on our behalf, they would share if we're doing open houses. They did some fun stuff for us where they started interviewing a variety of different people in the region and posting those on a variety of sites. If we received information from the business, so our business students are very socially active, we could share that information with them too. So we weren't just propagating jobs and talent acquisition information, but sometimes really good business information as well. Then after everything got going and we started to say, gosh, this is really good, we started to find that there were some best practices that started coming up. And my favorite thing, well, my least favorite thing, I should say, was when I would go out to my recruiters, you know, their LinkedIn profiles. Have you seen that faceless shadow of a person? Like, there's no picture. And I'm like, seriously, you know, this doesn't work, right? We're social creatures. When I worked at that employment office with the Rolodex, people had to see my face. We wanted to see recruiters' faces. And so we started to encourage all of our recruiters to update their profiles. And it wasn't just about a picture. I mean, the picture's great, because then you start to, I know George. It started to become more about how are we representing our company. And if any of you were around in the 80s, remember the dude you're getting a Dell kind of commercial? Well, we had people that were representing Dell that way. And Dell was so much more as a solutions company. And so we started to align on what industry would we like our teams to have on their profile. You know, what are some best practices around our employment grade video? Make sure we're actually using our career website on there. And we encouraged everybody to start crimping their own profiles. So we had no headless shadows that were on LinkedIn. We also started to create some programs linking recruiting best practices to social media. So when you start thinking about, okay, you've got recruiters that are sitting there and someone tells them, now you've got a tweet, it's like, what do I tweet? And so we started to have these global masters around social media start giving us information, practical ways that we could use Twitter or Facebook. And some of it started very simply as, where is Dell on Facebook? Because you had all of these different businesses that had information, and so the first part of it was just getting all of the information together in one spot. And that was very helpful for recruiters to know where to go on the YouTube channel to find a video that they could share with a candidate. All of those things started to happen and come together. The interesting thing that happened as you started to have all of these best practices, and we we did something where we started listening to recruiters' intake sessions. I've been a recruiter in 25 years or so. And when I was a recruiter, I loved the intake session. And we started listening. And one of the things we started to see as we were talking with or listening to these intake sessions is that recruiters were using social media in the intake session. So what I was expecting to hear was, what are the skills? When do you need the person? What's your competitors? And instead, it was kind of like these recruiters that use LinkedIn to do research. Hey, I see you worked at IBM for 10 years. Let's talk about who you know. Let's talk about the culture at IBM. What's different about IBM than what we did here? I see you're a member of these groups. Talk to me a little bit about your participation in these groups. And we started to see people get more comfortable. So instead of just using LinkedIn to go and find candidates, they were using it to research their hiring leaders as well. And we thought that was pretty significant in our organization to see that. We also started to see something happen differently with our employee referrals. So I'm sure everybody has seen those employee referral flyers that go around and have the job title and 3 lines of script and the dollar sign. And you wonder if you're getting the right people that are responding when you're sending out those messages. And so our recruiting team said, we got to do something different here. And what happened is we started to see our recruiters going into LinkedIn Recruiter. They might do a search for a specific skill set, and they see that Bob knows the guy. And Bob knows a lot of guys that have this experience, and they would sit down with Bob and say, Bob, I just want to pick your brain on your referrals. We'd do a screen share with their LinkedIn profile, kind of walk through all the people that Bob knows. Bob, what did you think about Joey here that you worked with at IBM? And we took that information and we started to get referrals that way. In our in-mails, instead of saying, hi, I'm Pam from Dell and I'd like to recruit you, we could say, hey, Bob referred me, said you worked with him at IBM for 10 years and you're a rock star. I'd like to talk to you. And so we were able to start changing the game of how we were asking for referrals. And these sessions, we call them jogging sessions. It's really to jog people's mind. We take all of that information we get and we plop it into our CRM, and we have really good ways of tracking how things are going with our jogging sessions. We even do these strategic referral sessions, let's just call them, with our employee resource groups. So it's a really good way for us to hit a lot of different people through using social media. So as Brent shared, once we got our app, we started looking at some of the simple, no-cost things that we could do to kind of engage our own talent acquisition team. It was time for us to do what Brent said when we went to Las Vegas. It was time to go to Vegas. There's really time for us to start thinking about how can we engage all of Dell in some of the things that are so critically important to us. And that's where we started with our Hire the Best. And Hire the Best, when we were sitting down and developing some of the content, we were sitting around thinking about, okay, what are the things that managers ask us about or that drive us crazy about leaders? And it was kind of like, the leaders that ask you, do you use the Monster board? And it's like, oh gosh, if they ask you about Monster one more time, right? We're strategic, we do different things. And so we said, we want to talk to them about that. We want to talk to them about their behavior. So there were 4 objectives that we set out to do when we developed this curriculum. And I'll tell you, we developed the initial curriculum that we did in about 2 months that we took to Las Vegas. And one of them was that evolution of talent acquisition. And it really goes back to that question of, are you using Monster? While we as an organization in talent acquisition have kind of shifted how we go out and find talent, our leaders haven't been privy to that. So we really talked to them about this journey that I talked about at the very beginning of that Rolodex and all that stuff. And we started giving them some of the secrets of our success and how we find talent in the marketplace. We also talked to them about the impact of social media on talent acquisition. So that became important because leaders really didn't understand that their brand mattered. And we started talking to them about when someone goes out and looks for a job, and they know they're going to interview with Bob, the first thing a candidate will usually do is go look up Bob on LinkedIn. And if Bob's profile is still talking about dudes are getting a Dell and we're saying we're like a great startup and a solutions company, I bet that person's not going to be excited to meet Bob. So we talked a lot about that. We also talked a lot about the relationship with talent acquisition and how leaders could maximize that. And we spent a lot of time talking about the importance of forecasting. Are you guys still chasing that forecast? We certainly are. And we really tried to share with leaders the importance of doing that because then we can pipeline. We can also do something really great in intake sessions, which is learn more about the competitors that we may be working, competing against for talent. It worked really well for us. And we had a lot of leaders that were in the audience shaking their head. And then the last thing that we talked about was this war for talent. And I think sometimes, I don't know if any of you have any leaders at your company that, do these interviews and they say, let's grill them. And they put them through 50 interviews and it's like 25 questions apiece. And we really wanted to share with them that didn't work. And this is what the war for talent is. And LinkedIn helped us pull together some information about where we were winning talent and where we were losing talent to companies. We also showcased to them the importance of words, and we talked about the job description, the importance of the job description. When leaders sit down to write a job description, they're not thinking about, I want the sexiest job to get the best person. So we talked to them about small things that they can change in how they're advocating their job. And we did the content in about, an hour and a half when we first did it. We now have it down to an hour. We've got over 1,000 people that have engaged in the program, which is pretty fantastic. One of the proof points that we shared was a LinkedIn campaign we did many years ago, and it was the start of a really, really good relationship with LinkedIn. This is something we shared with the leaders because we wanted to answer that question about, do you all still use Monster? And this is actually a really good example of it. Dell was in a place where we were looking at starting to hire software developers. And the thing about it was, we didn't really think that anybody thought of Dell as a company to go who had software development skills. And so we partnered with LinkedIn, we shared with them the issue that we had there. And we started a series of things. We did a couple of things. One of them was a perception survey. We started off this perception survey with, what do you think about Dell? What do you think about companies that are in the software development space? Would you consider Dell? Those types of questions that they pushed out to people who had software development type of profiles. Then, after we got those results back, we had some specific targeted ads that we put out to some of those same folks, right? Trying to influence them that, Dell's a pretty cool place to work if you're a software developer. So we did some of the direct emails. We had our leaders engage in a featured question. So some of them who were of a software development mind would ask some questions relative to software development. And then when we rolled it all back, we used the Talent Direct to kind of find out who's interested in talking to us. This was over a series of 6 to 8 weeks we ran this whole campaign. And what we started to do was develop this passive candidate pipeline of people that were interested in opportunities that we were able to present to the hiring leaders. If you want to get in software development, this is what they're talking about with Dell. And this is what we're going to have to do. And here's the pipeline of candidates that are ready to engage with us. And we wrapped it up with a follow-up survey that kind of showed us if we moved the needle. And we did. We moved the needle. The other thing that we did, and you've seen the Rock Your Profile that's happening upstairs, and we did this when we were in our Sales Maker conference. We called it Pimp Your Profile. I think LinkedIn called it that at one point. And what we did is we really allowed leaders to start updating their profile. This was an opportunity for leaders to understand what should their profile say to make sure it's aligned to what we want to be talking about with Dell. We would get leaders in a room. In Vegas, we got everybody in a room. We had LinkedIn helping us. They went through all of the pieces of the profile. We had a professional photographer. And it was a fantastic way for leaders to kind of start getting in there and not having that shadow too. So not only did recruiters not have it, but we also had the shadow. And we had skeptics. So you may say, gosh, should leaders say, I don't want my guy's profile out there, a recruiter's going to find them, right? That's the first thing they say. And there were 2 points to that question. First one is, recruiters are really good, and whether they have a profile on LinkedIn or not, we're going to find them. So that's number one. And number 2, you need to be able to engage your workforce regardless of what's happening in social media, because the train's already left the station. So let's do this and advocate on behalf of Dell. When we started doing these profile sessions, we started out doing them really big, in big rooms. And I'll show you that now we have a process where we're doing them in staff meetings. I'm sitting down one-on-one, we're sitting down one-on-one with folks. It's not just limited to big events like this. This is just an example that we wanted to share of some of the things that our recruiters may take a look at with a leader when they're doing when they're updating the profile. So they'll take a look at, if you have a picture, what company or industry are you in? Is it aligned? We've made sure that our leaders have our jobs.dell.com on their profile page. They have our employment video on their profile page. All of those things, so they become ambassadors for us. And you all will get a copy of this in your materials as well. We also, for Hire the Best and for Printer Profile, like I said, we've done them in large events. We actually had our Women's Employee Resource Group ask us, can you come out and print all of the women's profiles for us? And we said, sure. And we got everybody together in a room and we started updating profiles. We've done them in staff meetings, so we might be working with a leader that was part of one of our sessions, and they said, could you come to our staff meeting and talk about this and help our leaders, and we've done it there. And then obviously we've done it one-on-one. These things didn't cost us anything. You can always find someone with a camera. You can always find someone that's willing to engage. We also have just a sample. This is I know it's a bit of an eye chart. I don't even think I can see all of the things on there, but we wanted to share with you just an example. Like if you were thinking, yeah, gosh, this sounds like a good idea, I'd like to do it. Once we had the content done, we could actually put on one of the large Hire the Best, Put Your Profile type of events in about 4 weeks. And we wanted to share with you the secret of how we did it. So what you'll see on the infographic is from stage 1 to stage 7, everything that we did to pull off those types of events. So if you thought, gosh, I'd like to try this, you'll actually have all of the secrets to our success. Once we, really started doing all this stuff, there were some interesting things that happened that were also free, and that came out of our recruiters' visions. And one of those is something that we call the talent acquisition correspondence. We have a talent acquisition leader who loves to write. Like he probably should have been a writer instead of a recruiter. And he came to us one day and he said, look, I've got an idea. What if we started writing articles that we could publish through a variety of different marketing streams that helped our talent acquisition image, that helped our business image, that did everything. And everybody was very excited about it. So what we did, we actually got a group of folks together who had passion for writing in all of these different regions. They got together. They met with our marketing team and said, what are the channels that we could use potentially to release articles? And then they got together and they started writing the content. And one of my favorite articles that they did was something called Chronicles of an Information System Director. And we actually have, at Dell, an outsourcing business where we do a lot of really cool things around IT. People didn't know about it because they think about Dell and the computer. So we interviewed one of the leaders and actually just started asking him about his role, what he loves about it, all that stuff. They did an article. Of course, there's the employment tagline at the end. Does it sound like something you're interested in? And then we released it to Forbes and a wide range of sites. The cool thing about that, although we got really good publicity and people were very interested in the article, a lot of reads, hits, our TA teams were tweeting it and sending it on LinkedIn. It was good, relevant content that they could use. The magic for me happened when I sent it to the vice president of that group. I said, I just want to show you what we did today. And it was like, wow, this is cool. This isn't just talent acquisition, hiring people. This is about you helping my brand. And we were able to do that. And then the final thing that I kind of wanted to share is another grassroots effort that we have going on, which is our social media action teams. We're regionally focused, but again, it's a group of people that said, we like what the global team does, but we want more. They get together on a monthly basis. They're actually doing the research of, okay, we have Twitter. How do we find a candidate on Twitter? Let's teach the recruiters how to find a candidate. And they started to develop content around it. So they were kind of like working in a lab and experimenting around it. We also started to see this group really help recruiters, and we talked about the intake session, but they started to build some content that we could use with hiring leaders during the intake around some of these social media avenues, which I think was really fantastic. And finally, they were researching new sites. So when Pinterest first came out, I remember them walking me through, look, we found a candidate on Pinterest. And it was pretty fantastic the way that they were able to connect all of social media into finding that candidate. And very simply, one of the simplest things they did was, hey, let's get everybody's Twitter handles, and let's share them. Because as you're trying to build that Twitter following, it's like, who do I follow? And it's kind of, it's helpful when you keep it in the family, right? It's easier to find followers that will respond to you. So we did a little bit of that. Very socially engaged team. Not everybody is there, as Brent said. It's not a perfect setup. We have people who are still with their Rolodex, doing their things, but these are just some of the tips that we found to help improve our talent acquisition engagement and then also our leaders.
Great. So in summary, hopefully something in here interested you. You said, we can do that. And that's our first advice, is just start small, start somewhere. None of this is rocket science, and none of us are any more brilliant than the others in the room, but you do have to think about stuff and come up with new things, but just start small, figure out what works in your culture. So that's the first thing.
And don't go it alone. If you've got a marketing team, a communications team, people that are advocating for your company, they will help you. And that's one of the keys of our success, of just sitting down with marketing and saying, help us. This is what we need to do.
And start with your own organization. So start with TA and figure out what's working, what's not working for them, because most likely if the culture's embedded in the company culture, that'll help you figure out what's going to work in the broader culture.
And my favorite thing is I kind of got intimidated by everything that was out there, and it's kind of like you gotta find the right shoe size for you. Try a variety of things, and then you may say, we're never going to use Pinterest to recruit, and that's okay. But one of the best things that I appreciate is the collaboration we have with LinkedIn, so we can go and tell them our social problems, and they can come with some products and solutions to kind of help us. And they're always open, and although LinkedIn's number one, they're always willing to give us advice on other products.
And the last thing is, measure and report and find things to measure that make sense for you. And it's not a perfect science. We'll talk about data. I'm sure we'll do the usual metrics seminar. It's actually a very good session on metrics. But figure out what you need to measure and look for directional correctness. It's an upward, downward, whatever it is. It's directionally correct. You're probably on the right path. So we have about 5-10 minutes to take some questions. And so if you've got any questions, we'd love to hear from you for that. And there are microphones, and so I've been asked to very specifically ask you guys to step to the microphone if you have a question. Yes, sir. Hi.
You spoke at the very beginning about getting your people on board, your ambassadors, about the why. Why is it important to them? So what was? How did you sell that to them?
What's the why? So the why is, and it ties into what we talked about. The why is people are going to look at your profile and look at your social engagement as an employee of Dell in our case. And so it's important for you to make sure you're engaged, appropriately. If you want to represent the company in the best light and represent the company culture and do this. So that's the why. What's in it for them is they get their profile improved and they get engaged in the broader dialogue. So as a professional, frankly, selling LinkedIn to a professional person as a benefit to them is pretty easy. So you kind of combine that with why is it important to you as a person, why is it important to the company, you marry those two. So that's been really helpful for us.
And the other thing we saw, even with our sales makers, is they really weren't using LinkedIn as a sales engagement model either. So as we started talking to them and talking to them about the power of LinkedIn, they saw ways, once their profile was updated, to engage with their customers, sharing relevant articles, sharing products and services, doing different things. It became an imperative for them. Because we started asking them questions, how many of you have engaged with your customer on LinkedIn? We'd ask them to raise their hand and nobody's hand was up. And it's like the light bulb went off. It's like, I have an opportunity and I need to take it.
Any other questions? Comments? Yeah.
I noticed you have the talent group address.
We do.
How do you integrate social media
So our website is on our platform, and then our jobs are on jobs.dell.com, which is the talent group address. And so everything is driven to that place. Okay, so we start from there. So all jobs are driven on a social basis to there. And then because TMP is the talent group. So TMP for us is how we're measuring who's coming in from where, what their history was, all that stuff. So for us, that was a good solution. I don't have the team to do that in-house. And so that was something we did, partnered with them on about 5 years ago, and it works really well. Perfect, it works really well. Good catch. Yes?
I have a certification.
Yes.
I find it challenging to keep up with changing social channels and how things are changing on a daily basis. So how do you guys keep them fresh and up to date so that everyone is kind of on the same level playing field?
Yeah, so the good news for us, since we're TA, is we don't own that piece, right? It's owned by the governance team that it's kind of a hybrid marketing comms team. It was specifically created to do nothing but the social media stuff. And so as a company, that group of people decides which platforms are important to us as a company, and therefore which ones are we going to train people on as a company. We do have some regional nuances in China in particular, in Germany in particular. So there's some local pieces too that are sort of separate, that we treat separately and say, we're going to teach you this there. But on a global basis, Facebook, Twitter, Plus, LinkedIn are the 4 biggies that we actually train people on how to approach it, why to approach it, why are we there, where are we there, what's interesting about it, all that stuff. So that team, and we're part of that team, helps decide what's important to Dell at this time. So yesterday, I was talking to Deep, one of the LinkedIn executives, and he said, the only thing he worries about is the disruptor who's sitting in this garage developing the next new big thing. So we don't know what that next new big thing is, right? But when it becomes relevant, we'll decide at that point, that's what we need to train people on and add that to our arsenal of things that we can help them evangelize our brand. So I think the key of our snack training is giving people the words to say. They do want to represent the company well. At least 80% of people do. So those are the ones you're going to care about for this anyway. You're more than 20. And of those 80%, let's help them navigate this and give them words to say and give them tweets to tweet and give them posts to post. I mean, make it really easy for them. And it really, it's the Breck Girl thing. It feeds on itself, and ultimately we benefit from the back end on the team.
And I think also from a recruiting perspective, even if you don't have the luxury of this big engine, there are people in your organization that are passionate about social media. And I tell you, this social media action team that we have, you give them a biscuit and say, hey, look, I saw something changed on Google+, go figure it out. They actually get excited to go and do that. So, I mean, using, people to do that. I know we think about, we gotta hire, we gotta fill, we gotta do all this stuff. But sometimes giving those folks the opportunity to engage is a really good opportunity for them to help with that overwhelming feeling that you get about social media, like what's new, what's changed, what's happening, instead of it having to rely on just one person.
So, biggest takeaway here is harness the power of the individual. And it doesn't have to be you only. It doesn't have to be your TA team only. It can be all of your employees or a majority of the employees in your company. So find the Breck girl, find the Breck guy, and engage them. And that's where the magic sauce has been for us. So thank you guys very much. Have a great day.